Shri Raghava Krishna. It is with considerable embarrassment, considerable trepidation, but a lot of gratitude that I stand here talking to all of you. I am in no way qualified or capable of talking about a subject as grand as Shri Raghava's vision for future. Like ma'am said, I thank you for making my introduction a bit more easier. I am but one of the faulty and ordinary seekers like the rest of us who are looking to find answers for the questions that animate us as individuals, that animate us as the voice inside our heads, that animate us as parents, that animates us as elders, that animates us as citizens of a particular nation and a civilization that we claim to represent, and that also animate us as a collective compact of humanity itself, because all of our fortunes across the world are tied together. And we have all these questions. In fact, in the world that I belong to, before I moved into education, before I know what I do now, in the corporate world, I was in game development in a creative industry. And trying to create fun is actually one of the most toughest jobs, because fun is very abstract. But my experience of working in the creative industry helped me understand a few things which form the moral and to a certain degree the intellectual code, and my journey since then has only strengthened this. The first of these convictions is a belief in the human potential. I work with artists, I work with designers, I work with technologists, I work with extraordinary marketing personnel and people who understand product. And when you try and get all of these different kinds of talent together towards one specific direction, and you want to do that in the service in a business context of a consumer, to make sure that you give reasons for people to respect you, you give reasons for people to engage with what you're providing. It's a very humbling experience. And so my foundational sort of temperament, having worked in the product development space, is a constant experience that your ideas will be tested in a marketplace, will be voted on by people through their time and through their energy and through their affection. So for me, the respect for time that people have is a very fundamental value. And I want to actually be very, very upright and honestly thank all of you for considering it worth your time to come and listen to what is going to be an attempt to try and talk about Shri Raghava to all of us. Like I said, I consider myself to be uniquely incapable of communicating this vision. But Shri Raghava has been talking to me and has been guiding me ever since, I would say, my intellectual quest began, maybe 10, 12 years ago. And it's a very deeply personal thing. What I bring to you is not so much the quantum of knowledge about Shri Raghava's work, but definitely the integrity of my association with Shri Aurobindo and how his thoughts have guided me. And so I'm going to speak personally, and I hope it will be a conversation where we can exchange dialogues, because these questions animate all of us. Like I said, all we're trying to do is find answers for who we are through the rishis and seekers and the civilizational inheritance that all of us have. It's actually extraordinary for me when I reflect, because this talk gave me an opportunity to think about what is my association with Shri Aurobindo. Because we take it for granted now. He's always there. Shri Raghava is always there, not just in the present, not just in the past, but more critically for me. And I think the case that I'm trying to make is that Shri Raghava is waiting for us ahead of time. Shri Raghava is not somebody to be read as someone that has written and who's existed at a certain point in history. Shri Raghava's thought is not so much about understanding how we come to be where we are. Shri Raghava's thought is actually to understand where we are going together as a collective humanity, what awaits us, and how we could make sense of this existence that we have. Without that, and I will try and the crisis that we all are going through as a global civilization, because my work is at the intersection of learning based on Indian knowledge systems, but looking at knowledge systems and learning in the service of a better humanity, and that is through understanding the collective compact, which is inevitable. In fact, if you look at the first slide, It says that he didn't come here to actually talk to us about a creed or a competition that already existed. Shri Raghava has come here to actually give us a concrete route towards an imminent and inevitable future. These words are very powerful, and I call Shri Raghava's words. Inevitable and imminent. And that means that we need to understand what is that time that we are living in, what is this experience of time that each of us is going through. And we, like I said, we experience this as individuals and as parts of collectives, but it is through the compass of Shri Aurobindo that we can really make sense. And this has been, like I said, my experience, because as a young person who had a certain kind of intellectual quest about understanding history, understanding civilization, understanding not so much in a vanity sense, but also to try and know more so that I can do my job well. My limited aspiration at that time was I am running a team, and the team, like I said, is extraordinarily talented. And I have a need to earn their respect, which means that I need to know a little bit more, at least in one dimension, than what they do. And that is what drove me towards Shri Raghava, because everybody else was already strong. There were strong engineers, there were strong designers, there were strong artists. So I wanted to be a strong, at least, understanding of human behavior. And what happened with Shri Raghava is the words just leapt out of the page and started grabbing me. I'm sure this experience happens to us when we read Shri Raghava. First time I read Shri Raghava, I began with The Secret of Veda. And I'm told now, and I understand why that is the advice, that it is not the right book to start with. Because that is way beyond my league even now. I don't obviously claim that I understand the secret of the Veda, but you could see that Shri Aurobindo was like none other. He was actually going back to something not through an established route. He was trying to actually get back us to the source by circumventing maybe a couple of millennia and going directly to the source and bringing it back to us not just the way it was. Sir was talking about it, we were having a conversation just now. He was bringing it back to us not just the way it was, but he was also bringing it back to us for what can be future forming. In the research world, in the academic world, we talk about research as fact-finding, research as an inquiry, but there is one powerful paradigm of research which actually, personally I find aspiring and also urgent, is the future-forming research. The quest for academia should not be to just explain what was. The quest for academia should not be to just explain some kind of abstract concepts. The quest is to actually create a future. It is always there. So when I first read the words like Kritam, Brhat, these words just jumped at me. I didn't even know when I didn't know Sanskrit, I don't know Sanskrit even now, I don't know the etymology of these words, I don't know the context. But when he spoke about Satyam, Vrita, Brhat, it just jumped at me because in one just phrasing, the entire thinking that I was going through became clear to me. And he talks about this as Ritachit. And that word just stayed with me. This is the most central idea that I try to imbibe in my own life. We call this the integral yoga, we call this integrality. But English, in fact, even though we can say that in many ways elevated English to a level where it can articulate some of the philosophical and mystical truths. But when you first start looking at the verse where he uses it in the Secret of Veda, and he talks about it as Ritachit, that word just stayed with me. That there is a universal pattern, and it is what we call perhaps integrality, the ability to look at all these things together. And you have a certain consciousness of that. You can actually develop within you, or probably discover within you because it's always there, seeking for an integral vision. And from there, my association or my reading, my quest, my journey with Shri Aurobindo began with this single idea of Rita Chit. What is the chit which can understand Rita? What does that look like? What does that behave like? What does it sound like? And this is, then obviously you try and understand it and unpack it a little bit more. And then I try to understand his work because his work is so voluminous, it can be daunting for the uninitiated, it can also be a little intimidating even if you are initiated. So how do you really approach Shri Aurobindo and what does Shri Aurobindo mean for the future? Then I started making a journey through the lens of psychology. Because Shri Raghava can talk to you if you are a nationalist. Shri Raghava can talk to you if you are an atheist. Shri Raghava will talk to you if you are a philosopher. Shri Raghava will talk to you if you are a student of psychology. Shri Raghava will talk to you if you are a revolutionary. Shri Raghava will talk to you if you love poetry. Which part of Shri Raghava do you access first is just based on you. But I think he is himself the very embodiment of integrality, just like the Indian civilization and the knowledge it's born. You can start from any direction. You can start from yoga, you can start from Ayurveda, you can start from psychology, you can start from any other stream. It will take you to the central integral notion. And that is the work that Shri Aurobindo, in my understanding, has done for us. And we have to understand this not just at the abstract or the macro level of civilization, but we have to bring it down to what we really are. The way I approach or I understand Shri Aurobindo is by understanding my fundamental impulse, which is the universal impulse in all of us. What are the fundamental needs that we have even before we recognize those? We have a need to grow, we have a need to know, and we have a need or an impulse to act. This is something nature has embedded into us. This is not something that we have from the time that we are actually in our mother's womb. And even before the process of individualization begins, the minute you hear the voice, there is a reaching out, there is a yearning to know, and there is a yearning to act. And if you start thinking about this, the civilization is actually something that expanded these fundamental impulses that we have into 4 expanse of knowledge. The need to feel love is what transcends into Bhakti Yoga. The need to actually know is what leads to Jnana Yoga. The need to actually act is what we understand as Karma Yoga. So this civilization is something that has actually brought our fundamental impulses that we have as human beings. Whether we know it, acknowledge it, are in touch with it, that does not matter. But this is something that we are born with. And this fundamental impulse, whatever that impulse is, that you might want to act, you might want to know, you might want to experience love, all of that has been tied together into the sacred. If you are somebody who wants to reach the sacred through knowledge, practice Jnana Yoga. Take it to the extreme. Our ancestors were not satisfied with just giving us first level answers. They've evolved every single aspect of our experience to the highest. If you are somebody who loves to act, if you are someone who finds solace, you find meaning, you find sense through action, they've taken that to the extreme, to the highest level. If you are somebody whose primary impulse is to act on love, they said, and one of the Shri Raghava seekers that I know explains it beautifully, says that all of it is fundamentally the primal desire. Right? And desire is like the first smoke that comes from Agni. And then it is purified. That Agni is purified because that desire to be loved is actually an expression of the divine love that the God has made. And it is us trying to find our own smaller expressions of that love, which is like the first smoke of the fire. But in this civilization, you are not left at the smoke. You are actually exalted to become the Agni, where you actually rise to become one with the divine. So that is the Bhakti Yoga. If you are somebody who is seeking ease through love, then you actually transcend the individual smaller love for the higher love of God. So this civilization already had this, and this is something that intellectually is very interesting as well. If all truth was available by the time of Vedas, why did we have to create Upanishads? Why did the civilization create Itihasa Purana? Why did the civilization give us Shastra? Why does the civilization continue to create? And Shri Aurobindo talks about the prolific, multi-sided vitality of the Indian civilization that creates incessantly. We probably have lost the ability to wonder in many ways thanks to the education and culture, and which is our area of work, and I'll talk a little bit about it. But the biggest loss that we've experienced in India is not just the loss of memory, which is substantial, but we perhaps have lost the ability to rekindle that memory because we've lost the ability to wonder. Otherwise, how is it that we have such an abundance of heritage and such a poverty of attention? We don't wonder anymore that there is a temple right across our street which is there perhaps for 800 years. What does 800 years mean? We try to create a small habit in our own lives, and we know each one of us would have this experience. We know how small our sankalpa is. You try to create something, you cannot hold on to it even for a week. You make, New Year is around the corner, it's fashionable to have New Year sankalpas, and they don't last beyond the second, third day, right? Because our Shakti is at that level. But the civilizational Shakti was something that actually gave endurance for 800 years. And we walk past the temple, we walk past the Gurukula, we walk past the tradition without even maybe caring to stop and reflect on it. It is through the rediscovery of wonder that we will perhaps rekindle our civilizational memory. And when we do that, when we actually get in touch with a sense of wonder, whether it is through a deliberate act or through a cultural instrument or through education, like the one that this school is providing, your life is content because for the first time you truly belong. You experience gratitude. And gratitude holds the key. It is gratitude that unlocks contentment. And once you have gratitude, once you experience contentment, then it is natural for you to know. The bhakti, the jnana, the karma all become one. Because you have given yourself a role as a legatee, as a custodian of an inheritance that the civilization has given you. To me, Shri Aurobindo's integral yoga is the actually sum total of all of these different temperaments, fundamental impulses that we have. Not by mere philosophical abstraction. That is the thing. He is not somebody who is sitting down and in a pensive mood writing about what is cognition, what is recognition. No. He is telling you truth as it is experienced by somebody at that level of consciousness. And he's not just saying this as an individual rishi who's experienced this. He is saying this as the creator of our destiny. He calls Bharat Mata itself, it's the school of Bhavani Bharati. That is the most famous exhortation in Shri Aurobindo's words of what our nation stands for. It is Bhavani Bharati, it is Shakti. And this Shakti has to rise to a certain purpose. And that purpose is something that he worked on. And the transition of Shri Aurobindo from the political, probably the greatest decolonizer there ever was, the political radical, to the saint, to the rishi, and the creator of the destiny of Bharat. And this is this journey which I think all of us are on as a civilization. Now we need to recognize what is stopping us from collectively acting on it or collectively feeling that intensity about it. And this is where I think we need to take our examination to what the world situation is today. There are some fundamental crises that are, whether we recognize it or not in our daily lives, that impact you and I in very, very deep ways. The first is a crisis of meaning. We are, in our times today, experiencing a total loss of meaning. We don't understand this meaning because we have a culture that's a cradle. There is that cradle that is still holding us. We have social relationships, we have a sense of sacred, we have institutions like this. So culturally our ancestors have given us so much that despite the constant and accelerated erosion, you and I still do not vehemently feel the loss of meaning. But if you were to just examine what is happening in the world, and increasingly it is coming into our homes, our children are experiencing this. Our children are experiencing this because that is how the human nature is. That if you stoke one dimension of the human experience incessantly, which is, let's say, the sensory experience, it also means that it saps the vitality for you to experience life in all other connectedness. And that is what the culture is doing today. My work at Brhat, my team and I, we work on what we call cultural transmission. For the first time in the history of this civilization, and I say this responsibly, not for impact, but just to raise the level of awareness on this, we are experiencing a challenge where we do not know if the values that we carry will be given to the next generation. I am a product of a liberalized India. I came into the employment market in 2001. 1991, India liberalized, seen as a modern epoch. And it's not my talent, it's just the rising tide of global capital coming into India, which created opportunities for all of us. This whole IT sector and everything that we call today is fundamentally a capital investment that has happened to the rest of the world. And because we were a nation long suppressed in the fundamental dimensions of Artha and Kama, we did not have the ability to actually lead liberalization from the lens of Dharma, or to actually respond to liberalization from Dharma. 20 years, 30 years into that epoch, where we've actually sort of, given ourselves to the pursuit of Artha and Kama alone, based on the globalized world, we are seeing the first challenges of that, where your marriages are not holding on, your children are not able to have a conversation with you, your elders are for the first time experiencing loneliness. This is unheard of in India. If this is happening in India, you can imagine what is the state of the world. In fact, in the rest of the world, just some statistics or some points for us to understand what is the gravity of this crisis. 80% of knowledge that is produced through research is actually seen as unnecessary and inapplicable to society. This is a crisis of education. 50 to 60% of marriages in the Western world today, the dominant civilization, which we are part of. We have to recognize that I am also speaking English. As much as we still have our culture that helps us transition, we are significantly impacted by what happens in the world, and we are governed. Definitely our kids are governed by what happens in the world. 50 to 60% of marriages are ending up in divorce. There is a large-scale opioid crisis that is gripping the Western world. 85% of the Western world today has some kind of addiction to a prescription drug, if not even. We will have to ask, India has to ask, not just ask but also lead, but firstly ask, what is this global civilization that we are creating, where families cannot hold, individuals cannot hold on to their own mind, and the entire process of learning and education as an enterprise is not able to offer anything to the society. Now, if you were to unpack this a little bit more, why is this crisis of meaning really so pervasive now? Maybe there are other philosophical explanations, maybe there are certain other mystical forces, and this is where, for me, Shri Raghava becomes really, really urgent, because like I said, he is waiting in the future. But for that future, we need to understand our present. What has happened is, in the 16th and 17th century Europe, gods were exchanged. Europe went through what they themselves call 600 years of dark ages. 1080 to about 1680, they went through the dark ages. The flowering of the intellect, the flowering of the individual response to a system that asked them to completely suppress their rationality was so strong. What we call enlightenment, what we call Renaissance in 18th, 17th century Europe, was such a powerful force that it completely eliminated religion and brought two new gods. It brought them the gods of reason and freedom. You are capable of extraordinary reason because you are born intelligent. And because you are capable of reason, you should have infinite freedom. This is the value that your children are imbibing today. Their main gods, when they go into the culture today, are reason and freedom. And for a traditional society like India, this is a very difficult challenge. Because we are not equipped to answer some of these questions unless we really deliberately focus on it. Because we are, in some ways, like Shri Aurobindo first, like Sir said, experiencing before he spoke about it. We are an Anubhuti culture. Our epistemology is to first experience it and then talk about it. So in our generation, even in my generation, we were, of course, all generations are rebellious. We were rebellious in our own ways. But even then, if our parents were to tell us you go to the temple and do pradakshina and do it 3 times back to left, we would first do it. Then we would get the experience, we would get the prasada, we would come back. Right? That experience nobody can deny. That experience is part of it. But if I were to tell my child that today, the first question is why right to left? Why 3 times, why not 5 times? This is a deeper symptom. All of us go through this as parents. Why is this happening? It's the challenge of a experiential tradition trying to deal with a global culture that is explanatory. It seeks explanations. It demands explanations first. It does not recognize that it's a lower level intelligence to question. It's a higher level intelligence to experience. But you cannot say this to your children upfront directly like that, because that seed has been put into them. That really sharp impulse of individuality has been ingrained in them, because the gods now are reason and freedom. So how do we logically explain to them the limits of reason and freedom? One thing is to try and show them what has happened to the societies that pray to reason and freedom without a deeper theory. Tell them we need, at every level, we need a massive national vision for parents in India today to actually come together and examine the cultural underpinnings of what they are experiencing as strife in their families. And when we examine that, and when we look at it from Shri Raghava's perspective or an Indian civilizational worldview, you will start seeing the limitations of reason and freedom. Now, what is this relationship between reason and freedom? Their argument is we can demand all kinds of freedom, which is then incorporated into your public policy as rights. That's why your children today are speaking the language of rights. They are not speaking the language of dharma. They are talking about rights. The idea of rights is deeply ingrained in them. Right? Now, if you were to reason with your 9th standard child or 10th standard child, we also need to equip ourselves. Then we start unpacking it from our lens. If we rediscover our lens, then we can examine it critically. Okay, you have claimed that we are all capable of reason. And on that basis, you are saying we demand freedom. And this freedom is what freedom? This freedom is the freedom to. It is the freedom to consume, it is the freedom to hold arms, it is the freedom to explore, it is the freedom to go anywhere I want, dress whatever way I want. This is what is called as freedom today. Now you don't have a deeper theory of what this freedom does to you. If we were to look at our own theory of yoga and then examine this proposition that the Western civilization is giving you, that you have infinite reason, therefore you demand and deserve infinite reason and therefore freedom, then you can start asking, what is the yogic way of understanding this freedom? The yogic way is very simple. It does not deal with abstract. It gives you very specific. You are a fundamental constitution. You have some senses. You have indriyas. You have karmendriyas and jnanendriyas. These indriyas are going out into the world. They are coming into touch with objects. My sense of, whatever, seeing, touching, feeling, all of it. That is going to the world. It is getting data back to me about something. I'm able to see, I'm able to feel, I'm able to touch. When it gets the data back to me, I put a certain stamp on this, what yoga calls raga dvesha. That I like this, I dislike this. I like this, I dislike this. Constantly, every single second of your experience, even as I'm speaking now, there are certain things that your mind is telling you you like, there are certain things that it is telling you you don't like, for whatever reason. But all of that experience is happening inside of you. And then yoga tells you that these impressions that you put the stamp of aham as raga, dvesha, is what deepens into other sheets that you have. And that becomes your samskara. And your samskaras are the patterns which are compulsive to you. So you and I are nothing but just creatures of our patterns that we form. So what you repeatedly hear, touch, feel becomes a pattern in you, and that memory, when it is triggered, you are automatically following that. So there is no freedom in that sense, because you are already bound by what has already been experienced and what you have stamped as raga and dvesha. All life, Western psychology also recognizes this today. All life today is to try and avoid your dvesha, try and access your raga. There is another problem which compounds this entire situation, which is why we are not able to respond to our kids. In any society, new change happens and new raga dvesha patterns are created. Then the society responds to that. You have a social technology, you have a cultural technology to respond to that. But the advent of what we call social media, this is, we call it exponential technology. The like button on your Facebook, the Instagram reels that your kids are seeing, it actually hijacks and puts on steroids this process of like and dislike formation. It commoditizes it and puts it on steroids. This is the challenge that teachers are facing today in classrooms. Even as you are explaining something, the kid's mind is already captured because the samskara formation has been put on steroids through the process of social technology. So not only do you have to contend with new gods, you also have to contend with new technology which is supporting those gods. So the Indian parent's job, the Indian educator's job is more complex. It is infinitely more challenging. And therefore, we have an urgent need. The reason I moved from whatever I was doing earlier, as fun as it was, to what I do now, what my team does now, is because this, if we do not address now in the next 10-15 years, we will lose what we call our cultural dividends. Because this danger is not like any other danger that you had earlier. At all times, of course, you had this liberalization change. Like I said, I am a creature of liberalization. You are in some ways part of whatever history has given you. But this pace at which change happens through technology and the virality of this. So you need to have a lens of what is happening. All of our desires fundamentally also are process of mimicking. We observe something, we like that and we want to mimic it. And the process of mimicking it, our desire gets intensified. What this technology does is it intensifies that mimicking process. It is giving you things to mimic from across the world. That is why today, we will not understand it, but in school, if a teacher is talking to a child, there is something happening in US about, let's say, ice bucket challenge. A few years ago it happened, some of you would have seen it on this one. And suddenly people in India are putting cold ice this one. Why? How can we go so crazy? All of a sudden. Right? That is the power of technology and desire. Because you want validation. You want to belong to a group. And the process of belonging to a group has been captured by these performative experiences. And those performative experiences are not your cultural experiences. We would rather have something where they are writing it there. Why can't that be a challenge? So we haven't actually been there to look at what is the desire formation process and how do we deal with this. So this is and since you cannot belong, since your mind is put on steroids, it seeks for the next immediate validation. I put this out, what next? What is the next? What is the next? Therefore you can never be stable. And without stability, without yadata, you cannot have meaning. So you're talking to your children when they're already in a zone where they've discovered and accepted that life has no meaning. And then Shri Raghava tells us life divine. Right? So do we have this, as Indians, we have this anxiety. We know that something great is there because we've seen it, we've experienced it, we see it every day in our culture. But we also know that our ability to represent it, transmit it, is becoming limited and smaller. That is why we need this. That is why we need institutions. That is why we need to do what my team is attempting to try and articulate our cultural values in a way that the next generation understands. Within the sense of meaning, is a crisis of ethics. There is a huge crisis of ethics. I don't know how many of you have seen the news that has happened in the last 1 week. We've heard of the war in Israel and Gaza. The world is going through not a happy time right now. And by all accounts, it is not going to be a happy decade. I do not like to bring this message to a public forum, but we must be prepared for it. It is not going to be a pleasant decade. That's the kind of alignment of forces that we are seeing. I don't know if there is a mystical explanation to this, but based on whatever causal factors we are able to see, there is going to be massive global scale unrest in terms of war, in terms of unemployment, in terms of global economy collapsing. So this crisis of meaning and crisis of belonging is only going to increase. Within this, there is also a crisis of ethics. Now, 3 days ago, the news came out that the presidents of Harvard, UPenn University, and one of the other, MIT, the Institute of Technology. All of them were actually brought to a parliamentary hearing in the US Parliament because in their campuses, people were actually bullied when they wanted to protest the war again. What happened in Israel when Hamas attacked Israel that day? Some people, some Jews protested, and the campus shut down the protest, and they actually encouraged some kind of other protest. So the campus played an active role because of some whatever value it has given to itself to take sides in a very, very complex war. So this hearing was the US parliamentarians asking education institutions. There was a direct call for genocide in the campus. There was a direct call for genocide. Are you condemning this or not? All of the three chairmen, people who are leading the most prestigious educational institutions in the world, said we cannot take a stance. I'm not getting into the politics of it, who's right, who's wrong. But I'm talking about the crisis of education, where you are not able to take a stance in your campus about the call for genocide. So, just today, one of the chairmen had to resign because, at least in the Western world, as complicated and as problematic as it is, the institutions of accountability still work. You can still see that there is a parliamentary hearing, people will have back, public pressure works. We do not have those mechanisms. What is this crisis of ethics? This crisis of ethics is because our self is fragmented. The political self has taken over the cultural self. The political self has taken over the social self. And there is no spiritual core. There is no sacred. For you to have some meaning in your life, for all of us to experience this, it is only possible when we get in touch with something that is transcendental, something that is higher. Otherwise, if you anchor everything in the human experience, we are absolutely prone to our lower behaviors. This is the secret that our civilization understood. This is the secret that Shri Raghava espoused. And how did the civilization do it? How did the civilization not get into this trap of crisis of ethics? It focused on three fundamental institutions, which is what we call a civilization. First of these institutions is family. It is in the family that learning is first anchored. That is why there is so much of emphasis on family in the Indian culture. It does not matter which region, which caste, which religion, but your emphasis is on family's culture. At the second level, it is the institution of guru, what we call the knowledge systems. And I'll quickly explain Indian knowledge systems because this is the response to this crisis. The Indian knowledge systems are idea of the knowledge and how knowledge has to be understood, transmitted, distributed, is the one that saved us. And finally, they created the sacred space. Because learning about all of us together cannot happen only when we are alone. It needs socialization. Now, what is the space to be created for that social experience to be brought into the sacred? A sacred core which also has a social dimension. This is where they created the religious institutions. A space like temple. It is in the temple that you see the arts. It is in the temple that you see the architecture. It is in the temple that you see ecology. It is in the temple that you see performing activities. It is temple that is education. It is temple that is mystical, spiritual, religious, all of that comes. We need to understand these institutions, family, guru, and the sacred space, to make sure that we do not fall prey to the same crisis of ethics and meaning that the Western world has gone through. Our work at Brhat, whatever my team does, is to try and explain the value of these institutions. What is the fundamental value of a family? Why is it the basis of civilization? What happens when family is broken? What happens when you do not have a knowledge system of your own and when you have to depend on somebody else's idea of knowledge? And what happens when your religious institutions are broken? Because if I say this is decoded in this cultural experience, in this landscape, because you have seen people doing this as a mark of respect. If you are writing a land, it is also actually understood only as part of the social experience that we've been in functions where that is the first thing to be done. an offering to the sacred. If you don't belong to this culture, then there is no way for you to make sense of that. And that is the process of socialization towards the sacred that the civilization achieved for over 5,000 years across such length and breadth. And that is what Shri Raghava talks about as well when he talks about the transcendental principle. And Shri Raghava is phenomenal because he does not. The greatest thing is there are obviously many great thinkers, many great intellectuals, many great, and we have great traditions. In the modern times, Shri Raghav's greatness, the way I see, is that he does not leave the Akshara for Akshara or Akshara for Akshara. He wants to bring the infinite experience as the infinite experiences himself. Which means that he is not content if you just have a personal spiritual experience. In fact, he says this, the job is, or the goal is not some individual reaching the heavens. Or he says that it is the individual understanding the spirit, and the spirit is brought down to earth. And it infuses and suffuses every single element. And this is the truth of the Vedic civilization. He is bringing it back to us that it is not enough if we pray personally for that itself is of course a great thing. But the adamance of our rishis, the greatness, the obstinacy of our rishis was such that they wanted every single atom in this universe to be sacred. That is why they created this space. A simple way, and I will end here, we can have a conversation. A simple way to understand this, what this means is our own experience of our life as individuals. We walk into this room, and till the time we do that, we're all in our zone. This happens happening in our houses also. You can be whatever you are in any other space in your home, but the minute you enter that zone, it is the same us, it is the same gathering, it is the same space. But within that, the minute you enter that, your consciousness is transformed. You're already entering the zone where you are more mindful, more aware. You are mindful of your behavior, you are mindful of your body language, you are mindful of your language, you are mindful of where you stand, how you stand. What is that? It is that when you are in the presence of sacred, your awareness and your consciousness gets transformed and you get into that zone. The minute we are out of that, once again, we are susceptible to the raga Krishna. That is how the civilization brought all of us together by creating these sacred spaces. The entire civilizational work in Bharat was to reconnect you to the sacred in every single way. From sunrise to sunset, they knew that we will go, and they had the empathy because that is natural. The empathy was that it was not suppressive to say you cannot go there. Because that does not work. That has been tried. The Creator God has been tried. The traditions of rejecting joy have been tried. They don't provide an enduring answer. That is why Shri Aurobindo bought integral yoga. He bought integral yoga because all other methods have been tried. Even within the Indian tradition, when you have each of the darshanas that has been taken to the extreme, you still need, that seems to be the pattern of nature, that she starts with something, takes it to its perfection, then diversifies it, brings it back, and then she starts another pattern from there. And he understood this and he said, this is why the synthesis or the integral yoga. We have to create these sacred spaces, these spaces for awareness and mindfulness and for common sharing. Wherever to me, this school, this institution, this entire space that we share today is one such sacred space where we are able to transform our consciousness and look at a collective future, to tackle the crisis of meaning, to tackle the crisis of ethics, and to understand the knowledge system that actually gives us access to that. The Indian knowledge system is fundamentally a composite, a bringing together of 5 or 6 different streams: the Vedic stream, the Buddhist stream, the Jaina stream, the Sikh knowledge system, and the folk and tribal, where all of this comes together as an experience. It is a collection of top to bottom, bottom to top, which is the true nature of this civilization. Anand Kumar Swami, who I regard very highly, along with Shri Raghava, he calls it the Deshiya and Madhya traditions. The Madhya is the directional, the Shastra, which sets the direction, which gives you the best practice. The lived everyday experience which generates knowledge is the Deshiya. In many cultures across the world, when these two interact, the Madhya eliminates the Deshiya. When Europeans went to America, they had to literally kill the Native Americans. They kill them and then put them in a museum and exoticize. They will write a nice book, but they cannot deal with the living culture. It is in this civilization that your Shastra, the highest of compendiums, the Vedas, coexisted with the bottom of knowledge systems. And he talks about this, Anand Kumar Swami writes that in times of turmoil in this civilization when we were attacked, it is the Bhartiya, the higher knowledge systems that fled and sought refuge in the Deshya, in the culture. This is why when you think about what you see in the Varkari tradition, you see somebody with a son going on the road with just one instrument, and he is singing the same thing that you would probably learn from the deepest secret of Advaita. It is, we don't understand this beauty because, like I said, we've lost wonder. But whatever Adi Shankaracharya ji was writing, what you would probably hear in a Sant Dhaneshwar tradition by somebody who's traveling on the road. This is the greatness that all of that knowledge has been made accessible for us. That is the empathy that we need to discover, we need to once again propagate to deal with the crisis of meaning and ethics. Thank you. Not just questions, it's a conversation about what are the challenges we are facing. What is our expectation from education? What does culture mean? What are the questions you're getting from your children? How do we answer this?
Yes, I think precisely. Hello. What are the questions being asked by your children? So this is what I think can trigger this conversation to become something very interactive. Because I think as teachers, as parents, you are constantly coming across this conflict. So please, I request all my teachers to start questioning.
Really mesmerized. I was really glad to listen to this. I have one question about the challenges that demand. Currently, the society is facing technological, that you said, social technology, and part of this system. And we know the problem, but we are not able to come out of things. And also, this is gripping, we know. The more we, as you said, the companies, the Facebook or Insta, they like to have more likes. The more likes you get, the more business they have. But it is a trap. In the system, we are all part of this, and the children are mostly impacted. How to get out of this?
This is a central problem that we have, and it's a bit like Karma. Right? You can only enter, you can't exit. Right? And so we need to understand first. First process in all of this is to even at least recognize what happens and understand and acknowledge that it is a problem. Firstly, we are at that level. Now, what is really happening here from a neurobiology perspective? There are three chemicals: oxytocin, dopamine, testosterone. Right? Some of you from the sciences probably are aware of this. And I was in game development, and game development is entirely about, like I said, creating fun, but the fun has to be engaging and addictive. We are talking about gamification of learning, but we are not talking about the process of addiction in that. What it is it's a mechanism through which technology triggers dopamine. Dopamine is the thing that is triggered that gives you a moment of like. So every single time that you get that like, or when somebody comments, you get a small dopamine kick. And like all drugs, dopamine is a drug. Like all drugs, you need to keep getting it in increasing doses even for you to have the same level of satisfaction. And therefore, what happens culturally? Whatever you and I are posting today, we get some likes. But tomorrow, that already has become stale. Not even tomorrow, 1 hour later, it has become stale. So I need to do something more radical to get that like. So I need to keep running to get the same level of attention. That is why first I post a photo. Next I post a photo with a comment. Next I post a photo with a comment tagging somebody. And gradually I go to ice bucket challenge. Then from ice bucket challenge I go to baking challenge. I go to some other challenge. Because you have to, the mind has been hijacked. Your Raga Dvesha is put on steroids. So you need to the first act is to reclaim your knowledge system. You need to have the yogic vocabulary to say this is Raga Dvesha. This ties you, this binds you in more karma. This means that this will come back to you as suffering. Because this cannot be handled only by regulation of state. That's a different, there's a work that has to be done there. It has to be done in a self-organizing manner. That the individuals themselves understand the dangers of this and have the tools and the mechanisms to come out of it. The first tool is knowledge. To understand from an Indian lens what happens if you engage constantly in it. You are feeding your ahankara. And the more ahankara you feed, the more you have to pay later. It is inevitable. Do we want to suffer more and more, especially at a time when we are incapable of something? It is one way to clarify so that people act responsibly by themselves. So the most effective way is actually knowledge about this. But this knowledge itself is not enough. Unfortunately, this devil is something like this, even if you know. Even I can talk very eloquently about this, does not mean that I am out of it. Right? All of us are in it. We are about it. Right? You need a charya. The Indian knowledge system is not an abstract theorization exercise. It is a fundamental embodiment process. So if your addiction to this dopamine kick is the problem, the solution to that is having some kind of charya which takes it away. Which is the sadhana, which is the meditation. What did this civilization do? There's a very, very new good book by Mohan Raghavanji, you can look at it, Elements of Indian Knowledge System. He talks about the two kinds of sukha, the Indriya Sukha and the Atma Sukha. That is symbolized in the form of Gandharva. The eagle that is looking outwards is the eagle that is engaged in the world of Indriyas, sensory experiences. And the eagle that is looking inwards is looking at the Atma. Problem is, the Atma Sukha is a deferred process. I can go and do meditation, kuch hone raha hai. Nothing is happening. Why is God not responding? Right? It's not like a Facebook button. God is not clicking like. Right? So, how do I deal with it? The challenge is, because the process is deferred, this process is instant. This has been put on fire, and that obfuscates and takes time and attention away from that. So we need to create this understanding, and we need to create these spaces for Atma Sukha. Again, Shri Raghava conception, you can think about this in multiple ways. Because he gives you not just theory, he also gives you the full explanation at all levels. From the physical level, to the vital level, to the mental level, to the psychic, and finally all of those other realms. He gives you what it is, the main way to understand it. And how to deal with it is, once again, the methods are already available. The minute we recognize this, we ingrain small habits into our daily culture. Maybe in schools. For example, one of the things that I would love to see happening as a policy across Bharat, in all government institutions, and definitely in educational institutions, is the idea of Pancharana. See, the abstract ideas of Vruddha, Dharma, and Karma, Punarjanma. Well, how is it that in the Indian civilization, everyone from the highest philosopher to the person on the street knows this? Think about the greatness of this. If you look at the Western civilization, when somebody talks about ontology, epistemology, that's all academics speak. No person on the street talks like that. But you go to the Indian street, you will see karma. Even the person who's demanding something from you says, "Me dharma chahiye." He is not seeking begging. He said, "You do your dharma." How is that? That is the power of this culture, that it did not leave ideas as ideas. It brought them down into a ritual. Ritual is the key. You need to create rituals. One ritual that we can create is the fundamental Indian concept of Pancharana, which is the exact opposite of human rights. Because your children are born into rights-based culture today, they are demanding it is my right. to have a phone, to have MySpace, all of this. But the Indian culture institutionalized Pancharana. It said that you are born into debts, not rights. You have 5 debts. You have your Pitruruna, Runa to your ancestors. You have your Devaruna, Runa or the debt to your gods. You have your Bhutarana, the Runa to all of the universe, sentient and insentient. You have the Rishirana, which is the Runa to the people who have given you knowledge. And you have the Nararana, the debt that you owe to all of humanity. Your job in your life is to fulfill these debts. Dharma is just fulfilling of these debts at one level. So we need to create these small little things through which they can experience this idea of Dharma. That is the antidote to that rights-based, that affinity-based. In fact, all of this is called attention economy. There are macro problems. It's very difficult as individuals to stay out of it. At a larger level, we need to do the work of redesigning the state, redesigning development. That is why when I say culture and Indian knowledge systems, our work is at all 3 levels. It is at cultural storytelling to have these conversations so that all of us can understand this. It is at the Indian knowledge system level so that this can become part of education. But it is also at the public policy level so that the state starts understanding this and it sets a different goal. It's very, very critical. That is the macro work that will take generations. What we can do within our spaces is in a culture, in a business that is saying it is all attention economy. What does it mean? Attention economy means you are the product. Your attention is the product. Businesses make money not by selling you something, they make money by selling you. If I spend more time on that, I am shown more ads, the business gets more money. So the money is based on, the economy is based on capturing your attention. So the entire research, and this is why I call it a crisis of ethics. This is a fundamental design ethics problem today. How right is it just because you have the power of technology and you know the weakness of people to give the power of technology to weaken people more? Dharma, that's the thing, Dharma is always the opposite. If you have a weakness, Dharma tries to elevate you to support you. If you have a strength, Dharma tries to make sure that you don't fall below the strength. Whereas when you only focus on Artha and Kama without Dharma, it means that it will feed into your lower tendencies. It will feed on your vulnerabilities. This is the challenge that we face. That is why I'm saying what happens in America does not stay in America. It's being right into your hands, into the palm of your children on mobile phones. And that conflict in your house today is happening because there is a different culture that only understands Artha and Kama, does not understand that. That is where we need to rediscover Shri Raghava to look at the global future. That's the answer.
First, I must congratulate you for identifying the crisis. But one thing, family, guru, sacred place. These are the 3 things. But today all the 3 are polluted. Who polluted them? And here, educators are there who are also parents. Others are there who are also parents. What is the psychology of today's parents? Right from the childhood, not even childhood, babyhood, the word of dollar is put in their minds. Not book, it's the money. And schools are started to make money. So how do you expect the schools would give the answer to the crisis, to solution to the crisis? But can we do something to bring in that with reference to Shri Aurobindo's approach to the life and the solution to the problem?
Thank you so much, sir. I completely agree. The reason I do what I do is because, like you said, we have a problem in all of our core institutions. And the whole idea of Indian knowledge systems-based education is that it helps us move from an Artha-centered approach to a Dharma-centered approach. Because unless you change the paradigm of education, the other things downstream cannot change. And that is why this place is so special to me, so sacred to me. What I saw yesterday in the entire event that we had is for the first time, probably in my experience, I have seen a school which is able to conduct an entire annual day on the basis of a fundamental epic of your civilization. This does not happen. And I am so grateful. I am just grateful because as somebody who is trying to work on this and somebody who is looking at the link from global to what is happening inside the family, it is very daunting because it's not easy to say this can be resolved. You look like a fool, right? Because you're going out and talking about these things, it does not make sense. So when I see an institution and I know that here is an institution for 60 years which has done this, then for me that is confidence. For me, that is actually an active play. So what we need to do is find more and more institutions like this, support them. But the journey begins when parents start understanding this. When we really start understanding the principle of karma, that if you go after artha at the expense of dharma, it is not something else that will suffer. It is us. All of us, what are the problems that life has? Either health, or wealth, or relationship, or money, or some other unexpected event. All of these things are affecting all of us. There is nobody who's escaped this. Right? So this civilizational way of tackling with this was actually to create spaces for good karma. So that all of us can rise up to that level that Shri Raghava actually talks about. He says that he is waiting at the future for the next phase of evolution of man. And he also says that for that to happen, each of our elements, our physical element has to be evolved, our mental element has to be evolved, our psychic element has to be evolved, everything has to evolve. That is the work that is already done. The work that we need to do, to my understanding, is firstly make people aware that pursuit of dollar has consequences which are very, very unfavorable to you in your family. It has to be personalized. If it is affecting somebody else, then we will not be able to do it. If it is on the street, something is wrong. Unfortunately, we've lost that connection between us and the street. So we have to recognize that this is now, colonization now is not about your land. Colonization now is the colonization of your senses. Your indriyas have been colonized. Your sense of time has been colonized. That is why there is so much of restlessness. Once we understand this, then we start respecting institutions like this more and more. Because this is really an oasis. My work, what I have come to do, is take the values of this institution, the methods of this institution, the philosophy, the direction, the character, the integrity of this institution, and make it available to many, many more people. Unless we have these spots, we cannot survive as a society. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to your answer. I think the way we can look at how do we prioritize and value as a society other things other than money. So if you look at society before and how it's evolved, we see that the most respected person in society back in the day was not the most rich or wealthy or landowners or whatever it was. It was the one that's knowledgeable, that's exalted. Even see everyone from any caste can take sannyasi. Why do we respect the sannyasi? Why do we respect the men that kind of renounce life and walk among us? It is something that is worthwhile. So as a culture, when we start valuing other things other than money, and respect is towards the acquisition of knowledge and acquisition of realization of these things, then we start progressing as a society. We don't value money as much. Then people that chase money, say, when the time comes, and try and kind of value other things. I think that's how I would look at it.
So from Indriya to Indriya Jaya, how do we move back to that culture of Indriya Jaya? Absolutely, completely. And in a system also, from those of you who like, if you haven't heard science from my team, she says that the way you can change this is by changing the ideals of the society, of who is really considered successful. When parents start telling their children that it is the most knowledgeable person who is the role model, then you are forming that psychology in the child's mind, not just the one who's gone to America and earned dollars. So that role modeling is very powerful. Like I said, all desire formation is mimetic. We mimic and we form our own desires that we see in others. So the mimicking has to happen of knowledge, not just of one dimension.
Yes, sir. Here I have a question. So there is inconsistency in our approach. If you look at family, institution, community, society, approach is different. So in this scenario, how to revisit our culture or how to inculcate the cultural value with students like
So one is the role of education, right, where the parent and teacher partnership is the most critical partnership. And it is very important that the students or our children do not have a schizophrenic existence, where the school is telling them something and then the family is telling them something. If that happens, then the child loses trust in both. And that is happening at a massive scale. So one of the things that we need to do, in my understanding, is we need almost urgently like a national mission for parents to help them understand what is really important for the child. We need that. And for that, work that we do, like I said, is cultural transmission to help people understand that these factors are causing harm in your family. Right? So that's one. That's when we can bridge the gap between family and the rest of the society. There are deeper layers of changing the economic system, changing the state. We need to work it out.
Well, Raghav, you did it. You are the man who is required for the present audience, not me. Yeah, you are breathing that ideas in other systems. You have put it very wonderfully. The whole necessity of this system that needs to be inculcated into the educational pattern. And to start with my observations, I think the very name that you have chosen, Brhat, as my sister also said rightly, is a very unique name. It does point to, as you also mentioned, Satyam Ritam Brhat, the supermind actually. Satyam Ritam Brhat is the Vedic word, Vedic name for supermind. What Shri Raghava calls supermind is called Satyam Ritam Brhat. So you caught it. Apart from that, my observations are one or two. You see, this question of this what you said about the Artha Kama and our orientation in the West is so much based on the Artha Kama, and we must bring back the element of dharma. Very rightly put. Shri Raghava also discussed the same point. In the foundations, he does bring it out. But may I point out to you, Raghava, not Raghava, my Raghava is sitting there, you are Raghava Krishna. So Shri Raghava points out that this famous great idea of Artha Kama Moksha has been there in India for centuries. But then the question is, has it delivered the Indian society? He says no. It has been a wonderful social, spiritual, ideal mantra. It has not been practiced on the mass level. That is why India had to face all the deterioration, all the foreign invasions, all the cultural invasions. Because India's greatest weakness has been the greatness of idealism which has never put into mass practice. We had these isolated ashramas where a dozen people, 30 people, 20 people went and practiced a bit of all that. And that is one thing that I would request, I would tell your IKS team, that see how this deficiency, this defect of the ancient Indian system can be corrected. Do not emphasize on bringing back the dharmic view. That we have had. We have plenty of this, all those shastras and all the great gurus, everybody talks about the dharma. But are people talking about putting that into practice? And Shri Raghava says, sorry, with all due respect to the Indian civilization for centuries, 10,000 years, he says they have failed. If I can say the word, I don't think he uses it, but I added, very miserably to live it. So I would request Raghava Krishna that with your team, you find out ways to how to implement it, make it part of a life. And one of the things that you said rightly is, and maybe Chala is right there, and Shri Raghava himself wanted to do that, why he started the afternoon school, was precisely to bring these educational values and make them a living part. And the living part can be done only when the child is young. You cannot teach a college student of arts college and say, hey, live a dharma life. It means nothing for him. But you can tell Chala and the teachers here that find out means how to live it. And one example you gave very rightly is somebody asked the question, this question of our ideas. If making wealth and becoming a spell star are my role models of the society, well, I'm sorry. Those little role models, as somebody said rightly, those who have the knowledge, why do you go to a rishi or a great saint or a great muni? Because of his knowledge factor and the experience behind it. So this is one of those small ideas which can be put across through your textbooks, through your examination, through your board test, through your plays, through your wonderful drama that, yeah. Congratulations to all of you. I'm Jack. I didn't have to say much yesterday. I could not say because my mouth was shut. Because you have done it in very usual, not a very unparliamentary language. You have done damn well yesterday. So, well, yeah, I wanted to tell you that. So, through all these things, these are not Ramayana itself. Ramayana stories are known too well to repeat the story. But if somebody could have put a dialogue there, better, this is what it is. You have to carry this value to the student. So Ramayana becomes meaningful today, not on the stage. But if it can impart some kind of a value, saying that my children, Rama was an ideal son. He obeyed, that's fine. All that, great Purusha is there. So what I want to tell you, one thing is, Raghav, you see in your team, there are time scientists, you have architects, you have engineers, put some of these values on the living level, number one. Number two, this question of Artha Kama, done it. But then when you came to the question of, if you remember your own first quotation, unfortunately, you missed out a very important note there. It said, one of the things you said is showing a way to find out the new and the inevitable future, or two words are there. Imminent and inevitable. Before that, there's something else which you forgot. Surpass the past. You see, Shri Aurobindo is here to show you how to surpass the past or outpass the past and show you the inevitable future. This phrase of the surpass of the past is surpassing the past is very, very, very important. And that's where your IKA should not, this is the word, is it? Overpass the past, not surpass. Why should you forget the most important word? Mother has not said that for the heck of it. Because Shri Aurobindo is the future, but we have to see that he has to overpass the past. And one of my personal advices to IKS and the group members who are there who are not there, do not be a prisoner of the past. And as I told you already, you said a wonderful sentence yesterday on the stage. I don't know if you wanted to say that, but somebody through you said that. We do not belong to the past dawns. We belong to the dunes of the future. Past grounds are just all about the past. And the news of the future, the inevitable future. So please remember, these are two very beautiful messages. So ideas, with all due respect, do not just bring about the glory of the past. Foundations is nothing but just this. Shri Raghava brings out the brilliance of the past. But the same man who said this, we do not belong to the past. So please remember that we have to bring back, you see, you said very beautifully that we have to have a memory of the past, bring back the past. But Mother and Shri Raghava have emphasized umpteen number of times, however great it might have been in the past, right from the Vedas till the present time. Uncomparable. You see the foundations, but you will not find a greater praise of Indian culture than what you find in the foundations. And yet, Mother and Shri Raghava both have said, the future is much greater. Because obviously, the future that will belong to a new consciousness. Please remember, for as long as there is this mental, rational consciousness, we cannot surpass it. It has done its best. But Shri Raghava says we are bringing in a new consciousness, much beyond the consciousness of reason. And that's why it's bound to be better and greater and brighter and what you said, more life divine. So bring in this concept in all your education, in your dramas, in your theories, in your acting. So these are the little hints, little injection that you have to put into your day-to-day life. Don't think I'm going to make a drama out of it. So what is that? The third point Raghav made is about the two Godheads, reason and freedom. That is again a wonderful concept. But that's where Shri Raghava strikes again. You know, there's one of the sentences in the volume 17 Upanishads, Shri Raghav's collected works. He has a wonderful sentence. He says, Indians have forgotten to appreciate the Vedas and the Upanishads. They don't. It specifically mentions Indians do not anymore understand the Upanishads or the Vedas. Why? Is it we have become less intelligent today? No. For a simple reason, he says we have become more rational today. He says what has been the great harm that reason has done? Not just to bring you AI and you're all happy that the thing that AI has come back and today Europe is going to make new laws how to control AI and all that. But the damage done by reason and rationalism is that it has killed religion, killed spirituality. And as I said rightly, Raghav, because question. And you tell your youngsters, you have got a reason, you have got a mind, can't you think for yourselves? Why don't you ask questions? But questioning is dangerous also when it comes to your own sacred spaces. Some of the sacred things you cannot question. Otherwise, you know, people have questioned Shri Aurobindo and the mother. You see how far reason can go? So what's big about that? I can also question Shri Aurobindo and the mother. So this is where we have to be careful. Reason is a good guide, but Shri Aurobindo, in fact, it's in the library man, he says, how much reason has damaged, it has brought you material wealth, AI, your hospitals, but in the evolution of consciousness, it has taken away your spirituality, your religion, you call your ritual, it has done. So Shri Raghava says, we Indians have forgotten or cannot understand the Upanishads or the Veda until and unless you surpass reason. That's the very important thing. So let's not be proud and be limited to reason. If you want to understand your ideas, sir, in the true sense of what is a Vedic tradition, You have to tell your children, go to the next level of the mind. Let's not tell our children, be great intellects, great doctors, great this thing, and then go to Upanishad. There's zero understanding. So those of you who are turning to Shri Raghava, it's a hint that do not judge Shri Raghava or the Upanishads or the Vedas through your mind. Shri Raghava has given us great hints in the secret of the Veda, which you have read as the first book, wonderful thing. But then he says, reason is the helper, reason is the bar. And reason is the bar when you come to understand, wanting to understand Upanishads. So these are some of the small things, but which can be translated, transferred to the young minds. In fact, I'm not telling you, exaggerating. When I was a kid, 14, 15, I wrote the same letter to the mother. I said, Mother, everybody says have the intuitive capacity, because mother says, in the next evolution, reason will be surpassed and intuition will play the role. Well, that's the future that you're wanting to talk about. It is a future, it's not that everybody can develop intuition today. But then I ask the question, how do you do that? How do I tell my children to do that? He says, it's the next in the waiting list. It's wanting to come down and occupy the children's mind and use them. But how will it come down? In a very practical way, Chala Mesana is all good talking, but how do you do that? You do the simply, when you sit for your meditation, it's not necessary, of course you do that wonderful chanting, I hear that every other day. But then add one more element to that, which you may be doing that, I don't know. She says, sit quiet. Speechless. Don't give them any ideas, any thought, anything to think about. Just, she says, be quiet. And then she says, as I'm looking at the light, she says, tell the children, tell yourselves to look above. And what is above, we don't know. But the very gesture is a practical thing that we can tell our children. And who will receive now? The point is, you don't attain, but that will come down. That intuition will come down. So it is there waiting, she says, waiting for humanity to receive it. So at least here in our children, in our school, this idea, children, I do not say silence in your mind, that's again you say meditation karo. Heartfulness as a meditation, mindfulness as a meditation, and poor sure the fullness has nothing. So he says, no. Just we do not want to silence the mind. We just want to receive something from the higher. What is that something higher? Don't know. But train them. And slowly, not this generation, you have been there for last 10 generations of the schools. Maybe in the next 10th, 20th generation, 4 children, 6 children will receive that intuition. And that is how you prepare. That's what I'm emphasizing. You said, why did Upanishads come about? When Vedas had the whole thing. No, Vedas had the whole thing. But the IKS is in the Upanishads, not in the Vedas. I'm sorry to blasphemous. That's precisely what the Upanishads did. They brought in the knowledge system of the Vedas and gave it on to the common man. Which common man is difficult, people do not understand. But as you again rightly said, somebody playing the Ektara, singing the same song that is there, but all this is really Brahman. It's precisely the attempt of the Vedas to pull down the Godheads to the common man. They have done that wonderfully. But the knowledge system was getting a little blurred. And that is where the Upanishads have come down. And Upanishads gave a wonderful tendency to the Sardarshanas, the philosophies and all that. So, Raghav, that is why I told you before you started the conversation that we must start an IKS or IAS, sure with the knowledge system in your venture. Otherwise, don't take India to the past. It's a good springboard, as the mother would say, The past is a springboard for the future. Use it as a springboard only, nothing more. And so you must bring Shri Aurobindo's knowledge system into your ambit of study. Call for youngsters, call for institutions who can help you in this. But without that, your efforts, I'm sorry, will be bogged down. I'm sorry to say with all your friends here. Because you're not opening a new future, you're opening only the past, you're bringing it forward. But then after 10 years, the youngsters will say, hey, from here, where do we go? All that you have said in the Sanskrit language is already there in my Upanishads, in my Shastras, everything is there. You have only anglicized it. So unless there is a stamp of the future, unless there is the admission, aspiration for Shri Aurobindo, I've told your guide Anuradha Chaudhary also, she was showing Pondicherry. I said, Anuradha, until and unless Government of India, Ministry of Culture or Education recognizes that Shri Aurobindo must be brought in as not as a system, give some other name. But unless Shri Aurobindo is brought in, we have no future. Because Shri Aurobindo, as the mother says, is the future himself. So it's not a knowledge, but it's a consciousness, what you said very rightly, Rita Chit. That consciousness of the future, that Brhat, you have given a name, that vastness has a consciousness. And that vast consciousness is called Shri Aurobindo. What more do you want? Let's have an MOU with you tomorrow and then work on that. Otherwise, Shela is impressed by Raghava Krishna is wonderful Anna. But I said, he is wonderful Anna for me only if he takes us to the future, not to a brilliant past. Okay, Raghav, I'm sorry, but this is what an elder brother, a man with a border that can tell you boldly on your face. Right, thank you very much, and congrats once again. I wish to see you again next year. With some of these things, not Ramayana, but I get something else, another Yana. But